Workers' unions and indigenous movements in Ecuador are mobilising against the increase in fuel prices announced by President Guillermo Lasso. The UN General Assembly is holding a high-level meeting on delivering climate action for people, planet and prosperity. Sudan's ousted Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok has been returned to his own home following Monday's military coup, according to a military source. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is from the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. The Unitary Front of Workers of Ecuador, together with indigenous movements, this Tuesday led mobilizations to reject the increase in fuel prices announced by President Guillermo Lasso amid a tense climate due to economic problems, political polarization and a rise in insecurity. Leaders of the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, as well as small farmers, Afro-Ecuadorian communities and other social movements, took to the streets to demand solutions to the problems faced by the population and to reject the neoliberal policies of the Lasso administration. While the national protest centres on a common demand for the reduction of fuel prices, each participating organisation also has specific demands. In the capital, Quito, protesters rallied before marching to the historical centre of the city to make their demands heard. According to the latest reports, police are violently repressing demonstrators and also journalists covering the mobilisations. Climate change is fueling migration from Guatemala to the United States as thousands of indigenous people and small farmers struggle to make a living. Two powerful hurricanes, Eta and Iota, struck the north of the Central American country in 2020 and decimated cardamom crops, with fields submerged for 4 months. When the waters receded, they left behind rotting vegetation and sterile soil, hindering the recovery. According to a study by the International Organization for Migration, more than 1 million Central Americans were displaced by the impact of the two storms. According to experts, such natural disasters provoked by global warming are a growing trigger for migration in the region, adding to the already existing poverty and violence. In September, the World Bank said climate change could prompt 216 million people to migrate by 2050, including 17 million in Latin America.
When they sow now, the bush dries up as all the strength of the soil has been washed away and there are no trees. When you sow it, it dies again as there are no trees.
They are suffering. It is hard because they do not have their crops. Many have gone northward because there was no way of surviving here. In the case of storms and hurricanes, since Hurricane Mitch, Stan in 2005, Agatha in 2010, and then Eta and Oita in 2020, it is known that people migrate either to the departmental capitals or to the capital or also to other countries, which is the most frequent. Right now, violence and poverty in general are the most important causes, especially in Honduras, El Salvador and Guatemala, but in certain communities it is known that this climate change was the trigger that gave the final push for people to decide to migrate.
The Supreme Court of Italy this Tuesday postponed to January 15th the final judgment against former dictator of Peru, Francisco Morales Bermudez, accused of the disappearance of Italians as part of Operation Condor, a United States-backed campaign of political repression and state terror across Latin America in the 70s and 80s. The magistrates adopted a decision while waiting to review the reasons for the sentence that their colleagues from the same court had handed down in July to 14 other defendants, 11 Uruguayans and 3 Chileans. The Supreme Prosecutor's Office is calling for a life sentence against Morales Bermudez to be confirmed in the first and second instance. Italy began to investigate the murder and disappearance of Italian Latin Americans in the Condor operation 2 decades ago. In 2007, authorities requested the arrest of a total of 146 soldiers from Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Peru, Paraguay and Uruguay. Facebook and YouTube have removed from their platforms a video by far-right Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro in which he makes a false claim that COVID-19 vaccines are linked to developing AIDS. Both firms said the video violated their guidelines on medical information regarding COVID-19 on claiming that vaccines don't reduce the risk of contracting the disease and that they cause other infectious diseases. In July, YouTube removed videos from Bolsonaro's official channel in which he recommended using hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin against COVID-19, despite scientific proof that these drugs are not effective in treating the disease. And a Senate panel probing the Brazilian government's pandemic response this Tuesday asked the Supreme Court and the Prosecutor General's office to suspend President Jair Bolsonaro from social media for falsely linking COVID-19 vaccines to AIDS. The senators called for the far-right leader to be barred indefinitely from YouTube, Twitter, Facebook and Instagram after he cited non-existent official reports from the British government allegedly finding fully vaccinated people are developing AIDS much faster than expected. The lawmakers said in a court filing signed by the 11-member panel's deputy chair that they could no longer tolerate this type of behaviour. The senators called for authorities to lift the data confidentiality on Bolsonaro's social media accounts, bar him from logging in to prevent the destruction of evidence, and order Facebook and Twitter, as well as YouTube owner Google, to provide nominally secret information on the president's usage. And we'll be right back after this very short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The UN General Assembly is holding a high-level meeting on delivering climate action for people, planet and prosperity. The meeting focuses on the gap between current and required technical and financial capacities to achieve the 1.5 degrees global warming target and how that gap can be met through showcasing best practices that simultaneously address climate action and the myriad structural challenges aggravated by the pandemic. Climate change is considered the greatest challenge of our time, a cross-cutting, multidimensional threat multiplier. The most recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report confirms that climate change is now rapid, intensifying and widespread. UNICEF's first Children's Climate Risk Index estimates that roughly 1 billion children live in countries extremely vulnerable to climate change's impacts. With only a few weeks remaining until COP26, the world is in a race to secure consensus to keep the 1.5 degrees goal within reach. And addressing the UN climate meeting, the Foreign Minister of the Maldives and President of the United Nations General Assembly, Abdullah Shahid, referred to the latest results in the organisation's attempts to promote the achievement of global climate goals.
It reached a feverish pitch with broad knock-on effects for climate action. And this support will only continue to rise. My friends, I am hopeful that we can deliver this. We have the science, we have the capacity, we have the resources. Let us work together. I believe we can and we should find the will to end the climate crisis. Today's event will not solve climate change. Only action will. Today's event is about reminding people of what we are capable of if we act in concert, trust in science, and intelligently mobilize the many resources we have at our disposal.
United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres also addressed the meeting, underlining the urgency of joining efforts in the global fight to reduce humanity's impact on climate change.
The climate crisis is a code red for humanity. And this Assembly and governments around the world face a moment of truth. In 6 days, world leaders will be put to the test at COP26 in Glasgow. Their actions or inactions will show their seriousness about addressing this planetary emergency. And the warning signs are hard to miss. Pollution kills 9 million people every year. Every day, dozens of species go extinct. Scorching temperatures are turning farmlands into parched landscapes.
And President of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, also addressed the high-level UN meeting this Tuesday, warning that addressing environmental issues cannot wait and requires investment that's currently wasted on arms races.
Castro Ruz said, "If we wish to save humanity from self-destruction, we must better distribute the wealth and technology available on our planet. This means less luxury, less profligacy in a few countries, so that there is less poverty and hunger across the great majority of the earth. We must make our human lives more reasonable. Tomorrow will be too late to do what we should have done a long time ago. The resources exist. We would just have to devote a part of the millions upon millions spent on the arms race currently to support climate action. There can be no solution at the expense of the development of the most needy, nor of the nations of the world who are fighting every day against hunger, poverty and underdevelopment, resulting from the prevailing unjust international order. This order which favours a small minority and tends towards irrationality, egotism and the destruction of the environment.
The United Nations Security Council is set to meet this Tuesday to discuss the situation in Sudan after Monday's ousting of the transitional government. This extraordinarily close session on the developments in Sudan comes at the request of the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Estonia, Ireland and Norway. The representatives from the 15 states that make up the Security Council will debate the situation after a delegation returned from a joint visit to the Sahel region. On Monday, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres condemned the coup in the Eastern African nation and warned that the situation endangers the political transition and stability of the country. Top officials from China and the United States have expressed the need to maintain communications in order to settle any dispute in the areas of economy and trade and to avoid conflicts like that seen in 2018. Chinese Vice Premier Liu He spoke with the US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen via video call. The two discussed the macroeconomic situation and bilateral relations, according to a statement from China's Commerce Ministry. Both sides said it was important for the two countries to strengthen communication and coordination on macroeconomic policies. China also expressed its concerns over US tariffs and the fair treatment of Chinese companies. Liu, who has led China's negotiations in trade talks with the US since former President Donald Trump embarked on a trade war with Beijing, has held talks with both Yellen and the US trade representative earlier this year. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Sudan's ousted Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok has been returned to his own home following Monday's military coup, according to a military source. The source added that security measures had been put in place around the perimeter of Hamdok's home. His release came after the international community condemned the coup and called on the military to release all government officials who were detained. Coup leader and Sudan's top general, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, said earlier that the Prime Minister was placed with him at his home due to fears he was in danger. Speaking at his first news conference since he announced Monday's takeover, Burhan accused politicians of incitement against the armed forces and defended the move to dissolve the transitional government, arguing that he was acting to prevent a civil war. And protests continue in the Sudanese capital this Tuesday against General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan's declaration of a state of emergency and dissolution of the transitional government on Monday. Soldiers shot live ammunition at protesters who took to the streets to announce the coup on Monday, leaving at least 7 people dead and over 100 injured. Shops in the capital Khartoum were shuttered on Tuesday as the pro-civilian transition protests continue. The coup has drawn global condemnation, with the UN Security Council due to meet to discuss the crisis. Central bank staff have reportedly gone on strike, and across the country doctors are said to be refusing to work in military-run hospitals except in emergencies.
Sudan's current situation is awful, but we will not accept any military coup in this country. That's enough. 30 years of al-Bashir's humiliation. We don't want another coup now. We want an elected civilian government. These people who turn on the government want to be presented with their innocent blood. The humiliation that we are already living is enough.
A South African court dismissed former President Jacob Zuma's special plea against the chief state prosecutor. The former head of state, who's on trial for corruption, claimed that prosecutor Billy Downer should be removed from the trial for allegedly leaking his medical records.
The written judgment accordingly concludes with the following order being granted. 1. The special plea is dismissed. 2. The matter is directed to proceed to trial in respect of the not guilty pleas of Mr. Zuma and Thales. And 3, paragraph 3 of the court order of 10 August 2021, as now clarified in paragraph 284 above, stands. Yes, this matter then is adjourned to the 11th of April 2022 for trial, set down for starting on that day and for the 2 terms thereafter. And Mr. Zuma is warned to be at court on the 11th of April 2022, and the representative of the second accused must obviously be present on that day, and the previous dispensation where he was excused would no longer apply.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with the Deputy Prime Minister of Afghanistan, Abdul Ghani Baradar, in Qatar on Tuesday. Yi expressed his hope for an open, peaceful and tolerant Taliban government. The Chinese Foreign Minister also sustained talks with his Qatari counterpart, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim Al Thani. China's foreign affairs policy follows an approach seeking to solve world problems through cooperation and respect, with a strict policy of non-intervention in the internal affairs of other sovereign nations. Ugandan police said a blast on a long-distance bus that injured several people was a suicide bombing carried out by a member of the Allied Democratic Forces insurgent group. A police spokesman confirmed the attacker died during the explosion and also added that the bomber was on the wanted list of members of the ADF. The blast on the bus near the capital Kampala, caused by an explosive device containing nails and shrapnel, which was covered by a plastic bag, followed a bombing at a cafe on Saturday evening that killed 1 person and injured 3 others. Officials had established a connection between the 2 attacks. Neighbouring Democratic Republic of the Congo's Catholic Church said the ADF has killed around 6,000 civilians since 2013, while other sources blamed it for more than 1,000 deaths in the Beni area alone since 2017.
As you're all aware, we registered another serious incident of a second deadly bomb explosion on a bus belonging to Swift Bus Company Limited in Uganda. Their motive is clearly ideological and out of hatred by the ADF. So we are also trying to carry an analysis that they have started with soft targets, but we believe that they could be having a very bigger plot of carrying out a major incident on a major installation.
A cyber attack disrupted the sale of subsidised gasoline in Iran on Tuesday, causing long queues at gas stations across the country. The Supreme National Security Council, Iran's highest security body, said the disruption was due to a cyber attack and technical experts were fixing the problem to re-establish the service. The attack blocked the computer system that allows Iranians to buy cheaper rationed gasoline using smart cards. The country is on high alert for online assaults, which is blamed in the past on the United States and Israel. And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.